Thank you very much for taking the time today to view our video. Before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to introduce ourselves. There are many aspects to 9.Connects, but it boils down to the fact that we're a PCB-centric organization. We believe and focus on the PCB due to the fact that it is truly the center point of all electronic design. That's where our expertise lies. We provide services not only in the PCB layout, but in design consulting as well. And during the technical portion of this webinar, you will see this expertise in motion. We are now the exclusive North American instructors for Altium Designer. We host 100 trainings throughout the year across North America, and we are excited to bring these trainings closer to you. In addition to our services, we are also a value-added reseller for a number of PCB-related software companies. And just to note, each company has been presented in past webinars. So if you're interested in them, please contact us or check out our website. And by the way, we provide one-on-one coaching for these tools as well. For more information on our services and past webinars, please contact us. Our information is listed in the description below. Thank you for giving us a moment of your time, and please enjoy the presentation.
We're going to discuss documentation, and it's a two-part seminar today, webinar today. I'm going to talk briefly about the Outjob file within Altium Designer, and then after that I'm going to turn the baton over to Ray Fugit, who is a senior apps engineer, actually a field applications engineer for downstream, and he's going to show you a tool called Blueprint, which takes things above and beyond what Altium can do. But for now, let's do a little bit of a technical presentation on the Outjob file. I have that open in front of me right now, and you may be familiar with this. If you're not, it's something you definitely want to take a look at. The Outjob file has been in Altium Designer for quite a long time, but it's gone through different iterations as they improve it. And this, I think, is the third iteration of it. So it's been in there for about 6 or 7 years, but they've improved it over time. So what is the Outjob file anyways? Well, it's a batching file. And that may be a term you haven't heard in a while because we don't normally batch things anymore. That's kind of those things that we do, we did 20, 30 years ago when we're doing mainframes, and we had to basically queue up things in order to get them through the processor. But this is a batching file because it basically allows Altium to queue everything up and produce these output files so that you don't have to keep going into the file menu of PCB and to have to say, well, create the Gerbers, create the bill of materials, create the ODB++, whatever you have to create. You don't have to keep going in there and separately running these things. Because number one, you're going to forget to do something. And number two, if you got to change something, you're going to have to go through that process again. And that's just a lot of administrative work for what you need to do to get things done. And Altium can do all of that in one file for you. So how do you create this? Well, the first thing we do is we go up to File, and we can say New, all right? And then we go over here to Outjob or output job file. We call it output job files. We also tend to call them by its extension, which is the .outjob file, so that's how I normally refer to it as well. But that's where we find it, and if we create it over here, this is what it's going to look like. So Altium has basically taken all those files that you can create in the FPGA editor, the schematic editor, and the PCB editor, and they basically made them available for you over here in one of these 7 categories. And there's other ones that they've created too that you wouldn't normally find very easily. So for example, if you need a net list, it's just a matter of clicking on any one of these arrows here, all right? And it will show you the entire list of those net lists that it can create, all right? Or for documentation, if we click over here, you can see all of those different things that you can normally create in the schematic, FPGA, or PCB editors. And if there are things that aren't available because they're not here open, then it's going to just gray it out. So I don't have any C or C++ files open, so as a result, they're being grayed out. But I do have a PCB, so it allows me to create something like a composite drawing if I want to do that. Now, for each one of these things, they usually give you an option, either a generic option, like in this case, either PCB document, or it gives you a very specific file that you can use. Now, what's neat about this is that if you use a generic term, Altium knows that you're trying to do a composite on a PCB document. But if you do this and you save this off, you can reuse this again and again, not only for your colleagues, but also for future projects down the road. Okay? So I'd highly encourage you to consider using a very generic name so that you can reuse this Outjob file over and over again. Okay? And then there's other things that they provide in here as well. So your assembly stuff, for example, your fabrication stuff, your Gerbers and your NC drill files and so on and so forth. Even for reports over here, okay, for your bill of materials, And the one I like a lot that they've added here is the validation outputs, because you can also create a report for your electrical rule check and your design rule check. Because a lot of times we run those things, but we don't keep a report of it. But hey, if we're going to send this off or we're going to archive this, these are good reports to have run so that when someone looks at it, they can see the state of that project when you did that. Okay? In addition to that, they also have some export stuff over here. All right, so primarily those things are going to go into an MCAD tool. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this one over here, which is one that I've set up a little bit already. And what do we need to do in order to set something up? Well, we basically look in the right category that we want to find things, and over time you'll get a feel for where things are located. Most of them are going to probably be in the documentation, assembly, and fabrication area. But again, just click on that little arrow, and you get a good idea of what's in there. All right? So if I create one, for example, and I can duplicate them, if I create a composite here, I'll just add it in. And I can change the name of this, okay, so they allow me to do this. And that's good because I can create files here in a few minutes that reflect this name. So I can call it Composite Drawing 2, all right, for example, or any name I want to give it. Here's my data source. I just have to tell it where it's at. And again, I can change this kind of on the fly, all right. And then lastly, for the output description over here, I ultimately have to get back to the configuration window, all right. And Altium provides those configuration windows for you the way you've always seen them. So if I go to the configuration for the print manager, for example. Okay, let's bring that up. And here it is. And it's very similar to the ones that you've seen all the time in the PCB document. And here's just another example for you. Here's the Gerber files. All right, same thing that you would have seen. So Altium's not creating any new setups over here, no new dialogues for you, okay? And so we've got that over here. Now the question that may come up to your mind is, okay, that's fine, Dandy. You tell me the files I want. You tell me where the configuration managers are, and now, well, how do I get these into the directory? And Altium does that through these things called containers. Well, what's a container? Well, Altium uses this term, it doesn't want to call them a directory because it's not a directory, but they use this term that's called a container because it is somewhat of a directory, but it's not. And really the best term I think you could use for it is really what I call a distiller. It's taking information from Altium and putting it in the right format to get it into your file structure. So if I was to rename this, I wouldn't call it a container, I'd call it a distiller, okay? Now, there's 3 different types of containers in Altium Designer, and let me go through each one of these very briefly. The first one is the PDF. So basically you're saying take these files over here and put this into a PDF format, okay? The second one that they've got over here is the video. All right, and the only one that I know of that does the video is this one right over here. So you just basically go into your documentation outputs, and you declare that you want to have a video of it, okay? Now, you don't create the video over here. You create the video in the PCB document. I'll show this in just a moment, okay? But once you've done that, you basically tell Altium where it is. You go to configuration, actually, pardon me, go to this one up here, and we go to configuration, and there it is. It's located. All right, now let's go over here to my design. So I brought this one up because it has a really good example here. I had this up a little bit earlier on. So here's an example of the Bluetooth Sentinel. It's the one that they provide with Altium Designer 14. Okay, and if you want to ever make a video, you put it into the 3D mode, and you go over here to the PCB, and you bring up this thing called the PCB 3D Movie Editor, and make sure you are in the 3D mode or it's going to complain about it. You'll see a big red lettering here that says you got to be in the 3D mode. And then from here, you just create the movie. So you can go over here and you can create a new movie. Okay, so you just click on New. You can give it a title so you can find it in the Outjob. All right, we've already got one here. In fact, Altium's already created a very good one for this. I'm going to delete this one over here, and then you create the key frames. Well, how do you create the key frames? Well, what you do is you actually maneuver it to where you want it to be. Okay, you zoom it in, zoom it out, you give it the angle that you want, and then you say, hey, add a new key frame in there. So I'm going to do that right here. So I'm going to add this in, and then you can give it a time duration in which it's going to sit in that particular location. And then from there, you can run it. And what's nice about this is that Altium's going to automatically zoom it and move it around and spin it around as it's trying to go from one key frame to the next. And you'll see that happen here right now when I play it. So when I press this here, you'll see it's on key 1 over here. The duration here speeds it up or slows it down. Okay, here's the next key frame, and then it's going to move on to the other ones as you're moving along over here. All right. And that's what you can do over here. And of course, now with the Flex Rigid, it makes it very easy to make these kind of things so that you can provide these to others. And this is really useful for those people who have to work with Flex Rigid and need to know the order of the bends. Okay. Now let's go back over to Outjob file. If I want to actually create this into a .wave file, what I need to do, actually let's go to this one here because this has got it set up already. So I need to basically tell Altium that I want to make this video. And you'll notice that each one of these containers over here will have bubbles associated with them. And so I do need to link whatever I've got over here to the right container. And Altium's kind of smart about that because it's not going to allow you to connect up things that just can't be done. So for example, this video over here can't be added to a PDF, and it's not added to this folder structure, which I'll talk about in just a minute. What we need to do over here is we basically need, Altium's saying, look, if you're going to use this, it's associated to a video, as opposed to PDF, which has its own radials, and the folder structure, which has its own radials. So Altium's smart about that. It knows which one of these files are associated to which one of these containers over here. So in order to do it, I got to enable it by clicking on it. And now this thing has been enabled. If I press Generate Content, it'll create the WAV file automatically for me. All right. So that's how the video aspect works of this. The last aspect of it is the folder structure. And the reason I talk about this one at the end is because the PDF and the video stuff they're very specific. If you're going to create a PDF, you know you're creating a PDF. If you're creating a video, you know you're creating a video. Really, the folder structure is everything else. Okay, so if you're creating Gerbers, it's going to put in the Gerber format. If you're creating bill of material, it's going to be put in Excel or .csv format. Effectively, what the folder structure is putting in anything else other than a video or a PDF. That's the easiest way to look at the folder structure. Okay, and again, if I want to add certain things to it, I can just click on the button and I'll enable it in there. And this is the order in which they're going to be generated. Okay, so that's how each of these is going to work. So if I want to do this, I got to click on this one, and it'll generate all those things that are specific to the ones I've got connected to it. PDF, same thing. Video, same thing as well. And I also have the ability to create other containers. However, they got to be in one of the formats that you see above. So you can't create, for example, a Microsoft document one, for example. You've got to create a PDF, or you got to create a video, or you got to create a folder structure one. But you're probably asking, well, why do I need to do that? Well, it depends on how you want to structure this. So let's go over here to the PDF for a moment, and I'm going to click on Change, because this is going to basically bring up its properties. And what you see over here is the exact same thing that you would see whether you open the video or the folder structure. The only difference is if you click on Advanced, this bottom area will change because this is specific to PDFs, okay, as opposed to if I go over here to the folder structure and I click on Change, the top will look the same, okay, and it'll come up here in a minute, but you'll see that the bottom over here actually is different, so it's got different options here. But the top generally remains the same, which is good because it makes everything very uniform. So if I want to change this, let's go to the PDF and let's talk about this, because this is where I think a lot of the confusion reigns. And this is why I struggle with that concept of container, because these things over here are file names, they're directories, and they're kind of directives that you're giving to Altium Designer. As a matter of fact, I call these things elements, and each one of these containers contains these 4 elements. And so let's go through each one of those very briefly. The first one is whether or not you want to release manage or manual manage. Well, they added this one in, this release manage, for the vault, okay? As opposed to manually manage, where you're basically going to save this, you're running this stuff, you're not using the vault, you're just trying to get this over to a file directory system. You can click on this, and it gives you a lot more control over where this is going to be placed. Most people just leave this alone as is. Altium's going to automatically put it into your project directory anyways, even if you don't mess with this over here. But if you want a lot more control over this, you can tell it another directory altogether. Okay? The second one is what I'll call the main subdirectory as to where this is going to go. So you've got a couple of options here. The container name and the container type for PDFs is going to remain the same. Now, if we were doing this on folder structures, they give you some other options here. You don't even have to have a subdirectory. You can just dump everything into the project directory all its own. Or you can give it its own name. Or if you want to timestamp it, you can use one of Altium's project parameters. Okay? So you've got a number of different options that you can use over here when you're creating this subdirectory. And one of the things you may have noticed over here, like say, for example, if I take current time and I press done, they have this thing that's called the preview. And the preview here is going to change up as you're doing these things. So you don't have to generate these and then go into the output and try to determine whether or not and this is going to work or not. Okay, because that's going to take a lot of time. That could take easily 10, 15 minutes of your time. What this is doing is saying this is how it's going to look when we're done with this. And I'll actually show you guys this because I've already run it, so you can see how this looks in the end. But this is how the folder structure is going to be set up. This is the names that they're going to use. This is even the names of the files that they're going to use. And that's what you're seeing here. So this one's the main directory, which you see is called PDF. I didn't change the radial on it. The second one over here is a subdirectory if you want to further define it. Okay, you don't have to have it, but you can further define it if you want. And again, same options that you're seeing here. The only difference is that they're giving what's called an output name and an output type. And what that means is Altium's asking, do you want me to use the names that you've got over here, or do you want me to use the names that you got over here? That's really what they're asking for when they give you those options. And again, look at the previews because you'll get a good feel for it. And then lastly over here is how you want to handle the naming conventions of this. Now, unlike the folder structure where you really need to have separate files, they give you the option to glum everything together in the PDF as well. So that's what they've got over here. They're just basically trying to make it as easy as possible for you to do this. All right, so let me press done, and I'll press OK. All right, and if I want to execute it at this point, I get two options. Either I just click on Generate Content, and away it goes. All right, and it will basically take this file, put it through its distiller, create the PDF, second, third file, just puts it in the order based on the commands I gave up here, and it's really good to go. The other option that they've got over here is this thing called Generate and Publish, and that's really important as well. And I'm going to show you this because sometimes you don't want to necessarily keep this local to your directory. Sometimes you want to put this available to people on the outside, and maybe you guys have an iCloud, some location, right, someplace on the cloud that you want to put these things. And we can do that by clicking on Manage Publishing, and Altium can link to those things through its preferences. Okay, and so in the preferences, it just basically that's what it's bringing up is the preferences. Under Data Management Publishing Destinations, you can add a destination. Some of them they know by default, like Amazon S3, Box.com. If you already have these set up, it's very easy because Altium already knows how to interact with those. Others may require a little bit more effort, but nevertheless, they give you the ability to publish to locations that you don't normally interact with in Altium Designer. And as one person told me, one of the biggest problems with documentation issues is that if you save this to your local directory and then you send it to someone in email, you now have got duplication. Because someone's got one copy, you've got another copy, and the moment someone makes a modification, you're out of sync with each other, as opposed to publishing it to a central location where everybody pulls from the same location. Okay, so just another thing to keep in mind here as well. All right, so there's a number of other different features I'd love to spend some time with over here. Unfortunately, my time is kind of short. If you're ever curious or want more information about it, we certainly do offer the coaching services so that if you want to get into more of the manufacturing things and what things need to be set up and so on and so forth, we can certainly help you with that. With that, I'm going to kind of conclude because I want to give the lion's share of time over to Ray Fugit of Downstream. And what I want to do in introducing him over here is the fact of the matter is Altium's going to get you where you need to go to get your documentation out from a PCB point of view. And that it's very powerful, I think, hopefully, as you can see, and I hope that you'll use it if you're not using it already. What Ray's going to show you is that there's documentation above and beyond what we do here in Altium, and that there's certain things that have to happen downstream. That's why they call the company literally Downstream, because there's a world of things that happen in the manufacturing and in the assembly aspects of it that the documentation needs to address. So with that, Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Paul. I'm just going to test my screen here before we get started. Make sure it's working. Somebody could confirm.
Yes, Ray.
Thank you. Good morning and afternoon, even evening, wherever you are. What we're going to talk about here today is one of our products here at Downstream. It's called Blueprint-PCB. I want to give you a little background before we get into a demo of Blueprint-PCB, just exactly what the product is and where it came from. Here at Downstream, we already had one software product, CAM 350, and we decided about halfway into our existence, about 6 years ago, that we wanted to create another piece of software for the PCB industry, PCB design specifically. And since we all had backgrounds in working for major CAD systems, one of the most often complaints we heard was that the lack of documentation tools in those CAD products. So we set off to create a tool specifically for the creation of PCB documentation. And you think about that, it may be a mundane subject, but what we found is that a lot of our users were spending 20–30% of the design cycle creating PCB documentation, and we thought there must be a way to improve that. So we came up with some concepts that we used when we created this tool to help improve that. Our theory, first of all, was that what we're trying to create is finite. Basically, we are creating fabrication, assembly drawings, parts lists, panel drawings, test drawings. And those drawings have common content, top side views, bottom side views, stack ups. And most of the information needed to create those views has already been created when we created the PCB design. We just need to find a way to leverage off of that design to show these various views. And because we have finite items that we're trying to create, and we've already have the data to create them, we can use automation to create a lot of the common documents that people use in the PCB design cycle. So some of the things that went along with that idea, again, just an example of common items here that that people have on their documentation. Everything from a PCB view, in this case, a drill pattern, to a layer stack up, to a drill chart, or even notes. And we should be able to not only automate the creation of these, we should be able to reuse a lot of this information from design to design. So again, some concepts that went along with this. First of all, we wanted to create a tool that was dedicated towards PCB documentation, but also looked like a document tool. We're not trying to create another CAD system, another CAM system. So we wanted it to be more sheet-based than layer-based, like a lot of the people use now with when creating their documentation. We didn't want to have to go off to a third-party tool to create the documentation. We wanted to use the PCB intelligence to drive the documentation. Everything from a parts list, a drill chart, to a layer stack up, to top and bottom side views, we can extract all that information from the PCB design. It's just different views of the PCB. We wanted to allow unlimited placement of PCB views. Often you're limited with today's tools in how many views you can do it, especially if you're doing it in your CAD system. But even if you're doing external to your CAD system, you're constantly exporting and then importing, and then of course if something changes, you have to do the process all over again. So any kind of rotation, scaling, mirroring for each individual view that you've placed on your drawing. We wanted to arrange the interface specifically for what we're trying to do here, which is create PCB documentation. So we came up with the idea of palettes that were specific to the type of document you're creating. So an assembly drawing palette, a fabrication drawing palette. We even have a panel drawing palette. And then, of course, we have common elements, things that go on every drawing, like borders and title blocks and things like that. We wanted to give the users the ability to import data other than the PCB design. We understand that sometimes there's additional things you want to show on your drawings. You know, maybe a DXF of a faceplate or something like that that you want to drop down onto a drawing. So being able to bring in PDF, DXF, Gerbers, any kind of reference files, a specification, an IPC spec, being able to bring in graphics or even video files and embed them in their native format in our database. And then any kind of graphics or text from other applications. We wanted to use wizards to create the common content that we spoke of. So instead of having a 2-layer, 4-layer, 6-layer, 8-layer stack over in AutoCAD, basically I bring in the data, the wizard sees that it's a 12-layer, and it expands to a 12-layer stack up. So I don't have to worry that I've got the wrong stack up on a drawing and it doesn't match the data that goes along with it. We wanted to create the idea of active documentation or live or intelligent documentation. Right now, the buzz through the industry is intelligent PDF. Well, we can go well beyond intelligent PDF. Here's just an example of one area that we could do it. You've got a call out on a page that says Detail A. Instead of going to look for Detail A, you can click on Detail A and it brings it up so that you can view it. And in Detail A, there are hyperlinks in there directly to the parts list. So some of the items in Detail A, I can go straight out to the parts list through hyperlinks. And we can link things internal to the document, call-outs, notes, details, parts list, or items external to the document. I even have the, as I said before, I have the ability to embed files. I can hyperlink directly to a file. I can use OLE to embed a file in here. I can hyperlink to a URL, an email address. I can even drop a video or an audio file inside of my document. And then we wanted to provide a set of tools for everything else. Our note blocks are a word processor. Spell check, formatting, paragraph controls, justification, all the things that go along with a word processor are built into this tool. We've also provided a level of drafting tools in here. So in this example here, you kind of see a picture of a component, that's meant to be installed vertically. If you wanted to draw that in our tool, you could, or you could bring it in via DXF from some other tool. Not just associative dimensioning, but dimensioning in general. We wanted to provide a robust set of dimensioning tools so that you could do everything from standard auto dims or datum dimensioning to GD&T type dimensioning. We've also given you the ability to create tables and populate those tables via external files. Cut and paste between other applications, and again, being able to bring in basically any kind of file and embed it in the database. We wanted this whole thing to be live so that we don't have to do that DXF out, DXF in, and then work with that, and then, wait a second, I wanted something else on my view, so I got to go back to the CAD tool, and now I got to DXF out again and DXF in again. I've got the CAD data, so I can put down any view I want, but what goes along with that is if the CAD data changes, then my views change. So all I have to do to go from the 4 layer over here on the left to the 6 layer on the right is just re-import the data, the CAD data, and it updates. All of my documents update, and all of my views update, and stack ups, my drill patterns, all of those get updated automatically for me. And then we wanted to provide multiple viewing alternatives. So we understand that majority of you are still doing PDF and DXF type outputs, and we fully go along with that. But what we also have is the ability to use our own internal viewer to get all of this intelligence in the views of the design after it's created, after the documentation is created, so that if I have those live links or hyperlinks, or if I embed a video or something like that into my documentation set, it's live and can be used. And our free database viewer is, our database viewer is free. So anybody can download that from our website. We have a bunch of CMs that are using it now, so that when they do get a Blueprint document set, they use it as opposed to PDF because of the intelligence. Matter of fact, I was just on a webinar Monday with Qualcomm, which is our largest customer. They've settled on our tool across their entire design cycle. And we have a web-based version of our viewer, and they use it to view our documents. And they were comparing it to they also had the PDF available, and basically they just felt that there was so much more they could do with our web-based viewer than the PDF that they're probably going to switch to that in the majority of the cases. This is the manufacturing people I was talking to, not the designers. We also have the ability to embed the viewer and the document set into a single file and send that off. And once that file is executed, any embedded documents, live links are available to you. And And you can even time that for sending the job off for quoting. You can send that with it, and they basically have 3-5 days to look at it. At the end of that time frame, they can't access the data anymore. But of course, we have hard copies. You can send it to a printer. You could print to PDF, or we do have a PDF option, directly publish PDF from the tool, or even DXF from the tool. Okay, so that's just kind of the idea of where we came from with this tool. Let me go in and show you the tool itself now. Okay, and this is Blueprint. As you can see, it's a fairly modern tool. It was created from the ground up in Windows. What most of our customers do is that they create a set of templates that become their starting point for when they're ready to do their documentation. So here you can see a set of templates that have been created here. And actually, let me just kind of zoom out a little bit here. This is my company's document set. So I've got a fab drawing. I've got a panel drawing. We do assembly panels. I've got a top and a bottom side view. I have a drawing just for doing variants, and I have one just for my parts list. Okay, let's just take a look at these quickly individually just so you get an idea of what's in each one. But here I have a template for where I want my drill pattern to go. I want my layer stack up to go here, my drill chart to go here, and here's my notes. This is my fab drawing page 1. My fab drawing page 2, I'm going to do an assembly panel, and I've even placed fiducials and tooling holes in the locations that we always put them on our panels, and I've already put down the type of mill tab that we use in our panels, and I've got a drill chart here so that when I load the data, this starts populating, and then we just have to simply do some spacing and things like that to make the panel look like what we want it to. Moving on to my assembly drawing, I've got a top side view and again some assembly notes. I've got a bottom side view. I've got it set up so if I have some variants for this design that I can actually show those as well. And I've got a setup for my parts list. I'm just going to have it go left to right on this page. And if you've seen different documentation sets, you know that many people do this differently. A lot of people start over here and go this way. Some people start at the top, some at the bottom. We've set this up so it doesn't matter. You can do it any way you want to. Okay. Let's go back to that first page here, and what I'm going to do is import the data to populate this. And again, this becomes your starting point when you're ready to do PCB documentation. One important point that I should make, if you look at our import options here, is that we're CAD system independent. We don't care if you're using PADS, Altium, Zukin, one of the CR products, BoardStation. It doesn't matter. You can create consistent documentation from CAD package to CAD package by using our tool. Okay, from most of the tools we bring in ODB++, we bring in PADS ASCII from PADS, and we bring in IPC 2581 from the CR products from Zukin, as well as now Cadence also has the 2581 output, and I do believe that Altium has joined that that group and will at some point have it as well. So I'm going to import my ODB++, and it's going to ask me which of my drawings I want to update with that information. It may be that I have a drawing that I don't want to load new information, especially if I'm doing an ECO. Maybe I have a drawing that I just want to keep at the older revision. So I can choose which drawings that I want. One idea or concept is we have is the ability to generate reference designators and make them legible. So we'll do that for you on import, or you can do it after the fact. We'll go ahead and do it after the fact here. I say OK. It goes ahead, and once again, let's go to that kind of world view here. Here's my full documentation set. So, of course, it's not 100% done, but we've gotten quite a bit of it done just by importing data. I've got my my drill pattern here, which I'm going to zoom into. And one thing you'll find with Blueprint as you get used to it is right-clicking gives you a lot of your options with Blueprint. We also use a context-sensitive toolbars so that you don't have a bunch of toolbars taking up your screen. So when I click on a PCB view, I get the PCB view format pane. If I click on a note block, I get the note block format pane. So we try to help you as you go through it and you're working with your documentation by having the proper tools up. And I also mentioned before that we have palettes over here on the left. Right now we're showing the panel drawing palette, but let's just go to the fabrication drawing palette. And you can kind of see these are common things that you would add to a fabrication drawing, and they're simple drag and drop. Things that are under this underline here are managers. Things that are above it are things that can be dropped onto a drawing. Okay, but we've already done our drill pattern here, and I'm just going to show you that what I did is I had it do it 2-to-1 just by default, so it always comes in 2-to-1, makes it a little more legible. I can go in now and dimension this, you know, either do something like an auto dimension where I just simply pull a dimension off, or I can do point-to-point dimensioning, or of course I can do datum dimensioning, which is what most of us are doing. Datum dimensioning becomes fairly easy. You just come in, you just drop down DEMs. You can see that the snap options are showing to me as I drop them down. I can always come in and select them all and tell them to align. For individual dimensions, a group of dimensions, you have full formatting controls over what the dimensions look like, where the text shows, whether you want to add more text, what font you're using. Do you want to do something like dual dimensioning? What even your lines look like, and do you want to change the units on a particular dimension or a group of dimensions? So you have full control over that. Okay. We also have things, you know, kind of nice things like push and shove, so that if you do have dimensions that are real close to each other, you can do that as well. Another type of dimensioning that we support is GD&T. So if I drop down a feature control frame there and zoom into it and grab it, then I can go down here and pick what I want to go in there and build off of this and attach it to something as well. My layer stack up is one of these wizards that we use. If I go here and go to edit, you can kind of see how it starts out. All these are fields that get populated automatically from the incoming data. And once they do populate, I have my layer stack up. The drill pattern is the same idea, and of course it's associated with the drill chart's the same idea, and it's associated with the drill pattern. I can go in and change the symbols. I can set up my own group of symbols. I have control over how big individual symbols are as well. As I mentioned before, our notes are a word processor, so I can come in here and grab any note and say add a call out. And then I can take that call out and attach it to something. Now it becomes part of it, moves along with it, of course. And as I said earlier, it's hyperlinked. So this could be on a different page, could be on the same page. All right. We also use document variables for things like, you know, revisions and things like that, so that you don't have to worry about updating these each time on each individual drawing. Update it once in the document variable manager, it goes out and updates all your drawings. Okay. Let's go on to the, we'll skip that and we'll go on to the assembly drawing here for a second, and then we'll come back maybe to the panel drawing if we have time. Here's a top side view that I had. I also did this one 2-to-1. I have full formatting control over this. I can choose what data that I want to see. If I want to see all of the copper as well, I could do that. Or maybe I just want to show the components. If I go over into the Advanced tab, I have controls over that where I can even format individual components, or at the footprint level, or the layer level, or even at the drill level, show individual or not show individual drills. If I wanted to come in here maybe and grab some components and format these specifically, I might say, you know what, I want to put a fill in here, and I might want it to be a certain color, and I might want it to be a certain pattern. And it should just be that easy to do it. There's other ways to do this as well. I could come in here, and if I come in here and select a component, I also get the same sort of dialogue over here where I can do groups a little bit easier, and I can even format an individual component. And I might say something like, you know what, let's show an outline of the pads for this, and maybe mark pen ones with a square, and not just do this one, let's do all components of that type, and it goes through and does them all for me. So a lot of controls over the formatting of components on a page as well. if I go off to my assembly palette here, I might want to drop down an exploded view. You know, I might want to call attention to there, and maybe I just have some components that are just very small, and maybe I want to explode those and show how those would look. And of course, I don't have to show the same thing. It's not just a magnifier. I have full formatting control here. So I can come over here and say, you know, show me all the top side fill and lines and everything of an area, and it's completely formatable. If I put the mouse over it, I don't know if you get this on through the webinar, but it does give me a description of what I have the mouse over here, and it's accurate dimensionally, so I can go in there and dimension inside this exploded view. Okay. I can also drop down things like parts list, of course, and I can, in parts list, and I can not only use parts that came in via the CAD system, I could import a parts list external to this data that might have some attributes that I want to add, or maybe in this case I've actually got it so that it's going to bring in the bin number for me when I import it. So you have full control over what you put down as far as a parts list, and then you may add things like mechanical parts. You can even add those to the parts list through our parts list manager, and then turn right around and export it so that you do have a full parts list with both electrical and mechanical parts. We support variants in that I can format any view to show a variant. So I don't have a variant in here right now. I'm just going to quickly create one. This is one way you can do it. You can also just import the variant via CSV. But if I just go in here and uninstall a few items, I've created a variant. And I just simply choose to show that variant now as a as I select it here, and then I can choose which items I want to show. Maybe I just want to show the installed items, not the uninstalled items. Here I'm just going to show everything. It goes ahead and color codes them for me. I can drop down a list of my variants, and I have a variant legend that can go along with it. I'll back up a couple drawings here to my panel drawing. We take the philosophy that panel drawing should be easy to create. You shouldn't have to go through a CAM tool or into AutoCAD or anything like that. So I could just simply come out here to my panel drawing, format it, choose what kind of spacing I want to have here. Once I'm happy with that, I can come in here and edit it, add a web route, and then I can come into that web route and I can add mill tabs just by drag and drop. Okay? And I have a mill tab manager where I can create my own mill tabs. I can move these along the edge. I can turn any layers on and off so I can see if I'm hitting components or copper or anything like that. Okay? Anytime you add drills to it, they get added to the drill chart. And then, as I said before, I've already got a drill mill tab detail over here. This was a real simple set of documentation. You know, we sell a lot of this into military and medical and those industries, and the documentation sets can get very complex. But this is the general rule how most of people do it. Now, we do have some people that have automated it, like Qualcomm, I mentioned, our largest customer, that basically it's just a few mouse clicks. They even have automated the creation of panels through scripting. So we have a full API available as well. Okay? But our philosophy is you should not have to have scripting with our tools. Everything should work, you know, out of the box, as they say. So one last thing I do want to mention here, and that's just some of the output options. If I go ahead and, you know, I can export as PDF or DXF, I can save off this design. We do have our free database viewer that you can view any design. Here we go. So here's the free database viewer. Any of the live links in here are live. I've even hyperlinked to like individual views of the PCB from my parts list. All of that is available in the viewer. Okay. So as I said before, that's just like a quick demonstration of our tool, Blueprint-PCB. Just a couple final points here. You know, really, Intelligent PDF is the biggest change in documentation over the last few years. A lot of the things we're still doing are workarounds. Since we just concentrate on PCB documentation with this tool, using the intelligence from the CAD system, we can shorten the documentation cycle and get it away from 20 to 30% of the time, and we can improve the instruction.